The typical American household earns $84,000 a year. That same household owes over $100,000 in debt. It would need $117,000 in income just to afford the median home. Half of all working-age adults have little to nothing saved for retirement. And yet, more Americans than ever are quietly crossing the millionaire threshold. Something strange is happening here. The financial reality of America in 2026 is splitting into two completely different stories. On one side, millions of households are getting crushed by debt payments, locked out of homeownership, and watching their paychecks vanish before anything ever gets saved. On the other side, millions of households are building wealth faster than any generation before them, crossing that million-dollar net worth mark through home equity, retirement accounts, and long-term investing. Same economy, two completely different experiences. Here's what actually determines which side you land on. Understanding the real numbers. Not the headlines about billionaires, not the horror stories about poverty, the actual statistics that apply to typical Americans living typical lives. Because once you see where the average person actually stands on income, debt, housing, and retirement, you start to understand both the problem and the solution. You stop comparing yourself to extremes and start building a strategy that actually works. Let's break down the real, sometimes shocking financial statistics that define life for the typical American in 2026. Income, the starting point. Income is where most people begin. It's the number we quietly compare at dinner parties and stress about in private. The headline figure sounds reasonable enough. Median household income in the US sits at roughly $84,000. Half of households earn more, half earn less. But that single number hides a much more important pattern. Income shifts dramatically across your life. Early career looks nothing like your peak earning years, and what you make at 65 looks nothing like what you made at 45. Here's how it actually breaks down by the age of the household head. Households under 25 bring in roughly $42,000 a year, entry-level jobs, part-time work, people still figuring things out, nothing surprising. By 25-34, median household income jumps to around $66,000 as careers gain traction and dual incomes become more common. From 35-44, income climbs to about $78,000 a year. These are the years earning potential starts approaching its ceiling for most people. Peak earnings hit between 45 and 54, with the typical household in this range pulling in roughly $88,000 a year. After that, income starts tapering. From 55-64, households earn approximately $80,000 as some people downshift and others position for retirement. For households 65 and older, median income drops to about $55,000 a mix of Social Security, pensions, and continued work. Here's what really jumps out from this data. Even in peak earning years, the typical American household isn't making six figures. They're getting close, but they're not there. That becomes critically important once you factor in housing costs, debt payments, childcare, healthcare, and the expectation that people should also be saving for retirement. At $85,000 a year, there isn't a lot of breathing room. Spending where that income actually goes. Now let's look at what these households actually spend. Spending follows a predictable life pattern. It climbs through midlife as housing, transportation, kids, and daily expenses stack up, then eases as people approach retirement and obligations start falling away. Households under 25 typically spend around $28,000 a year, lower income, smaller households, fewer long-term obligations. From 25-34, spending jumps to about $55,000 a year as housing costs rise and lifestyles expand. Between 35 and 44, typical spending reaches roughly $70,000 a year. Peak spending hits from 45-54 at around $78,000 annually. After that, costs ease slightly. From 55-64, households spend about $68,000 as kids move out and some expenses shrink. Households 65 and older typically spend roughly $50,000 a year. These figures represent cost of living only, housing, transportation, utilities, food, clothing, healthcare. They don't include savings or investment contributions. So when you see that the typical midlife household spends $80,000 a year just to exist, that's before a single dollar goes toward retirement accounts, an emergency fund, or building wealth. If you're earning $85,000 and spending $80,000, you're left with $5,000 of margin for the entire year. That's $400 a month for everything else. This is exactly why so many people feel stuck even when their income sounds decent on paper. Debt, the part nobody wants to look at. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants to face. Debt. Americans owe more money than ever before. Total household debt hit $18.8 trillion by the end of 2025, a record high. The average household carries roughly $105,000 in total debt across mortgages, auto loans, student loans, and credit cards. Credit card debt alone reached $1.28 trillion, also a record. The average household carrying credit card debt owes about $11,000, at an average interest rate around 21%, closer to 23% for cards actively accruing interest. Here's the math that should terrify everyone. If you carry the average credit card balance of $11,000 at the average interest rate of 23% and only make the minimum payment, you'll pay nearly $18,500 in interest alone, and it'll take 22 years to pay off. By the time you're done, you'll have paid nearly $30,000 to eliminate $11,000 of original debt. And 47% of credit card holders carry a balance month to month. 26% of them make only the minimum payment. Think about that. A quarter of people carrying credit card debt are essentially on the 22-year plan, paying interest on interest on interest while their balance barely moves. The causes here aren't what you'd expect. 41% of people carrying credit card debt point to emergency expenses, medical bills, car repairs, home repairs, unexpected costs. Another 33% cite everyday expenses like groceries, childcare, and utilities. Only 10% blame retail purchases. This isn't a story about people buying luxury goods they can't afford. It's a story about people using credit cards to survive because their income just doesn't stretch far enough. Debt burden varies by age, and it peaks exactly where you'd expect. For people under 25, debt to income runs about 15–20%, mostly student loans and credit cards. From 25–34, it climbs to 18–25% as mortgages join auto loans in the mix. Between 35 and 44, the strain intensifies to 20–28%, peak borrowing years. The highest debt burden hits between 45 and 54, roughly 22–30% of income going toward debt payments. This is the squeeze point. Mortgage still active, kids potentially in college, retirement looming, and a third of every paycheck going to debt. After 54, debt starts declining, and by 65 and older, most people are down to 8–15%. Financial planners flag anything above 36% as dangerous, but even at 25–30%, you feel the pressure. Cash flow gets tight, saving feels impossible, and every unexpected expense goes on a credit card, which makes next month even tighter. The Federal Reserve tracks household debt payments as a percentage of disposable income. The most recent figure is 11.3%. That sounds manageable until you realize it means the average American spends roughly $1 out of every $9 earned just servicing existing debt. For households with above-average debt loads, it's closer to $1 out of every $4, essentially working a full week and handing over Thursday's entire paycheck just to debt payments. Inflation, the silent wealth killer. Now let's talk about the silent killer, inflation. The official inflation rate has cooled to around 2.4% annually. That sounds reasonable, even normal. But here's what that number doesn't tell you. Inflation is cumulative. Once prices go up, they rarely come back down. The inflation rate only measures how fast prices are rising right now. It doesn't capture how much higher prices already sit compared to a few years ago. Since 2020, cumulative inflation has reached approximately 25%. That means something that cost $100 in early 2020 now costs $125. Groceries alone are up roughly 25–30% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Housing jumped even more, rents rose 20–30% in many markets, home prices climbed 30–40%, and mortgage rates doubled from around 3% to 6–7%, which in many cases doubled monthly payments for new buyers outright. Utilities are running 20–30% higher than a few years ago. Insurance quietly exploded too. Auto insurance rose 30–50% or more in many states. Homeowners insurance jumped 40%. The current inflation rate might look tame on paper, but the cost of living doesn't feel normal because we're operating on a permanently higher baseline now. Here's a simple way to think about it. If your household spent $60,000 a year before 2020, that same exact lifestyle now costs $72,000.75,000. If your income didn't grow by that same amount, you're effectively poorer, even if your paycheck number looks unchanged. The people who feel inflation most intensely are the ones exposed to rising costs across every category: renters facing annual increases, people financing newer vehicles at higher rates, anyone whose income didn't keep pace. The people most insulated are those who locked in big expenses years ago, fixed-rate mortgages from 2020 or 2021, paid off vehicles they're still driving. Their housing costs stayed flat while everyone else's doubled. This is one big reason the financial divide keeps widening. Some households locked in low costs before inflation hit. Others are paying 2026 prices on 2019 wages. Housing, where the divide becomes impossible to ignore. Housing is where this gap becomes most dramatic. The median home price sits around $415,000. Meanwhile, median household income is roughly $84,000. Home prices are now roughly 5 times median household income, near historic highs.
Today, we will
to comfortably afford the median home at current prices and mortgage rates, households typically need an income closer to $110,000, That's 40–50% more than what the typical household actually earns. According to the National Association of Home Builders, roughly 75% of American households cannot afford a median-priced new home. 3 out of 4 families are priced out. The monthly payment shift tells the story most clearly. Back in 2020, a median-priced home with a 3% mortgage meant payments around $400 a month. Today, with higher prices and mortgage rates around 6.5%, that same home costs roughly $2,600 a month, nearly double in just a few years. For young adults especially, homeownership has become increasingly out of reach. The median age of homebuyers has climbed to 59. The share of first-time buyers has dropped by roughly 50% since 2007. This matters enormously because housing has historically been the primary wealth-building tool for American families. The typical homeowner has a median net worth of roughly $400,000. The typical renter has a median net worth of about $10,000 That's a 25 to 40 times difference in wealth, and it persists even among people 65 and older. Part of this comes from home appreciation over time. Part comes from mortgage payoff functioning as forced savings. Every payment builds equity whether you think about it or not. For a lot of retirees, their home is the single largest asset they own. And entering retirement with a paid-off mortgage means one of their biggest expenses simply disappears. Buying a home isn't right for everyone, but the data is overwhelming. Homeownership remains one of the most reliable paths to building wealth in America, and those locked out of housing are locked out of that path. Retirement, where the numbers get alarming. Now let's look at retirement. This is where things get genuinely alarming. Roughly 40–45% of households approaching retirement have less than $100,000 saved in retirement accounts. 1 in 4 working-age adults has no retirement savings at all. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances shows that over half of American households have no dedicated retirement savings whatsoever. Meanwhile, financial advisors estimate the typical retiree needs around $1.26 million to retire comfortably. The median retirement savings for people aged 55–64 is only about $185,000. For those 65–74, it's roughly $200,000. That's a massive gap. The average 401k balance tells a slightly more optimistic story, around $144,000 across all participants as of late 2025. But averages get skewed upward by high balances at the top. Medians are far lower. Here's how retirement savings actually break down by age, according to Fidelity data. Workers in their 20s have an average 401k balance around $30,000. By their 30s, that grows to roughly $80,000.90,000. In their 40s, average balances reach around $150,000.170, Today, we
will explore some simple
By their
steps.
50s, averages
This
climb to
process
roughly
helps improve your
$250,
daily productivity.
$000,
Consistency is key to mastering
300,
this skill.
And in their
Today,
60s,
we will
average
explore some simple
401k
steps.
balances hit around
This process
210,
helps improve your daily productivity.
$250,
Consistency is key to mastering this
These
skill.
numbers might sound
Today,
reasonable
we will
until you
explore
remember
some
that
simple
retirement
steps.
could easily
This
stretch
process
25
helps
to 30
improve your
years.
daily
A
productivity.
$250,000 nest
Consistency is
egg
key to
provides
mastering
roughly
this skill.
$10,000 a
Today,
year before
we will
Social
explore
Security.
Some simple steps.
Net worth, the
This
flip side of the
process
story.
helps improve your daily
Now let's look at the
productivity.
other side.
Consistency
While a huge
is
group
key
is
to
struggling,
mastering this
another
skill.
huge group is
Today,
quietly building
we will
real
explore
wealth.
some simple
The median
steps.
household net worth
This
in America
process helps
is approximately
improve your daily productivity.
$193,000.
Consistency
The average
is
is
key
over
to
$1
mastering
million,
this skill.
though that's
Today,
heavily
we
skewed
will
by wealthy
explore some
households at the
simple
top.
steps.
Here's how
This
median net
process
worth
helps
breaks down by
improve your
age.
daily productivity.
Under 35, about
Consistency is
$39,000.
key to mastering this
35-44, roughly
Today,
$136,000.
some simple
45-54, around
This process helps improve your
$247,000.
daily productivity.
55-64,
Consistency
approximately
is key to mastering this
$365,000.
Today, we will
65-74,
explore
about
some simple
$410,000.
This process helps
$75 and
improve your
older,
daily
roughly
productivity.
$336,000.
Consistency is key to mastering
Wealth
this
builds
skill.
steadily through the working
Today,
years,
we will
peaks around
explore some
retirement
simple
age,
steps.
then declines
This
gradually as
process
people
helps
live off their
improve your daily
savings.
productivity.
What's genuinely encouraging
Consistency
is that
is key
median
to
net worth
mastering
has
this
actually
skill.
increased
Today,
37%
we will
since
explore some
2019,
simple steps.
the largest jump since
This
tracking
process
began.
helps improve
And
your
that
daily
growth wasn't
productivity.
limited to the ultra-wealthy,
Consistency
middle-class
is key to
households
mastering this
saw
skill.
significant gains
Today,
too,
we will
mostly
explore
through
some
home
simple
equity
steps.
appreciation and rising
This process
retirement
helps
account
improve
values.
your daily productivity.
A record number of households have
Consistency
crossed
is
the $1 million
key to
net
mastering
worth
this skill.
threshold in recent
Today,
years,
we will
not through
explore some
inheritance
simple
or lottery
steps.
wins, but
This
through consistent
process helps
investing,
improve your
home
daily
equity growth,
productivity.
and time.
Consistency
Social
is
Security,
key to
a
mastering
bigger
this
role than
skill.
people realize.
Today,
Social
we will
Security
explore some
plays a
simple
crucial
steps.
role in this picture.
This process
The average
helps
Social
improve your
Security
daily
retirement benefit
productivity.
in 2026
Consistency
is approximately
is key to mastering this skill.
$2,071 a month,
Today,
about
we will explore some
$25,000 a
simple
year,
steps.
reflecting a
This process
2.8%
helps
cost
improve
of
your
living
daily
adjustment for
productivity.
2026.
Consistency
For couples
is
where
key
both
to
spouses
mastering this
receive
skill.
benefits, combined
Today,
monthly
we will
income
explore
averages
some simple
just over
steps.
$3,200.
This process helps improve
Here's
your
what stands
daily
out about how much
productivity.
people rely on it.
Consistency
Roughly
is key to
54% of
mastering this
retirees
skill.
get at least half their income from Social Security. About 1 in 4 retirees relies on it for 90% or more of their income. But there are two very different groups hiding behind those numbers. Some retirees lean heavily on Social Security because they never had the opportunity to save, lower wages, unstable employment, emergencies that wiped out whatever savings they had. For them, that $2,500 a month is everything, and it means a tight paycheck-to-paycheck retirement. Others lean heavily on Social Security by choice. They had strong earnings, built up solid benefits, and strategically used Social Security to delay touching their investments. For a married couple with strong work histories, combined Social Security could reach $6,000 a month or more. Same reliance percentage, completely different financial reality underneath it. Social Security was never designed to fully replace your working income. On average, it replaces about 40% of pre-retirement earnings. Financial planners estimate retirees need 70–80% income replacement to maintain their lifestyle. The gap between 40% and 75% is supposed to come from savings, investments, pensions, or continued work. For households without those extra sources, Social Security becomes the entire picture, and $25,000 a year is a hard way to live. There's another looming concern too. The Social Security trust funds are projected to be depleted around 2033 unless Congress acts. If that happens, benefits wouldn't vanish, but they'd be reduced to about 77% of currently scheduled payments. A $2,000 monthly benefit would drop to roughly $1,540. Most analysts expect Congress to step in before that happens, but the clock's ticking, and the uncertainty adds real stress to retirement planning. When people actually retire, and how long it lasts. Another major shift involves when people actually retire. For decades, the average retirement age hovered around 62–63. Today it's moved closer to 64–65, and it's still trending upward. Even more striking, labor force participation among people 65–69 has risen sharply over the past 20 years, and participation among those 70–74 has more than doubled. Millions of Americans are working well into their 60s and 70s, some because they need the income, others because work provides structure, purpose, and connection. What we're seeing is retirement being redefined. Rather than a hard stop, many people are gliding into it. cutting hours, shifting into consulting, transitioning gradually instead of walking away all at once. Longevity statistics make this even more important. When you hear life expectancy quoted at 78 years, that's life expectancy from birth. But if you've already made it to 65, the numbers change. At 65, the average man can expect to live another 19 years to roughly 83 or 84. The average woman at 65 can expect another 21 years to approximately 85 or 86. And those are just averages. About 1 in 3 men who reach 65 will live to 90 or beyond, and about 1 in 2 women will live past 90. For couples, it's even more dramatic. There's roughly a 50-60% chance that at least one spouse in a typical 65-year-old couple will live into their 90s, and about a 25% chance one of them reaches 95 or older. This means retirement could realistically last 25, 30, even 35 years. Anyone planning around a 15-year retirement is potentially setting themselves up for real trouble. You don't want to run out of money before you run out of life. What this actually means for you. So what do all these statistics actually mean for you? Here are the practical takeaways. First, use typical as a benchmark, then aim to beat it. These median numbers give you a realistic picture of where the average household stands. Look at the figures for your age group, income, net worth, retirement savings, and set your goals slightly higher. You don't need to be exceptional. You just need to be slightly better than average, consistently, over time. Small gaps between what you earn and what you spend create massive long-term results once invested. Second, make eliminating high-interest debt your top priority. The data shows debt is squeezing typical American households harder than almost anything else. Credit card debt, at 23% interest, destroys wealth faster than nearly anything you can do to yourself financially. Every dollar going toward interest is a dollar not going toward your future. The faster you escape high-interest debt, the faster your entire financial picture changes. Third, lock in big expenses when you can. Inflation has permanently raised the cost of living, but the people feeling it least are the ones who locked in housing costs years ago. If buying a home makes sense for your situation, a fixed-rate mortgage gives you long-term protection against rising housing costs. Keeping a paid-off vehicle as long as possible avoids constantly resetting to higher prices. Stability in your fixed expenses often matters more than chasing a slightly higher income. Fourth, understand that housing, when it's feasible, is still a powerful wealth-building tool. You don't need a dream home, a starter home works. The data shows a 25 to 40 times wealth gap between homeowners and renters, driven by appreciation plus mortgage payoff acting as forced savings. For households who can make it work, homeownership remains one of the most reliable paths to building net worth. Fifth, don't rely on Social Security alone, but don't ignore it either. Understand what your actual benefit will be, and build savings to bridge the gap between Social Security and what you'll actually need. The typical retiree gets about $25,000 a year from Social Security. If you need $60,000 to maintain your lifestyle, you need to find another $35,000 from somewhere else. Sixth, plan for a longer retirement than you expect. A 20-year retirement used to be the standard assumption. Now 30 years is increasingly common. Make sure your money is designed to last that long, keep growth investments in your portfolio, even during retirement, and build flexibility into your withdrawal strategy. Finally, recognize that consistent habits determine which side of the divide you end up on. Some households quietly build wealth over time, others slowly fall behind. The difference usually isn't income, it's behavior. Investing regularly, even in small amounts. Owning assets when possible. Controlling debt aggressively. Living below your means, even as income increases. These habits compound over decades into completely different financial outcomes. 2 Americas, 1 economy. 2 Americas are emerging from the exact same economy. One is drowning in debt, locked out of housing, watching retirement slip further out of reach. The other is building equity, growing investments, and heading into the future with options instead of anxiety. The statistics don't decide which America you end up in. Your decisions do. The typical American carries $105,000 in debt, earns $84,000 a year, can't afford the median home, and has far less saved for retirement than they'll actually need. But the typical American who makes different choices, who attacks debt aggressively, who prioritizes saving over spending, who finds ways to own assets instead of renting them, builds wealth that compounds year after year, until they're no longer typical at all. The numbers in this video aren't meant to discourage you. They're meant to show you exactly where the average person stands, so you can make choices that put you somewhere better. Median net worth at 65 is $410,000. Average is $1.8 million. The gap between those two numbers is decades of consistent decisions that most people simply didn't make. You can be one of the ones who does. You can be one of the ones who does.